Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. I have a very special guest today. I'm excited to be joined by Owen Gathonga of Compassion International, and he has an amazing and inspirational story to tell. You're going to want to stay tuned for this. And we're also going to be talking about his background, his journey, and how this story ties directly with my wife, Julie, and I deciding to fund a child development center in Ghana, supporting 200 kids, and the impacts you can see coming alongside Compassion International. How are you doing today, Owen?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day today.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate you coming on with me. For those who aren't familiar, with your story, can you please explain your background growing up as a child in the outskirts of Nairobi, Kenya, and some of the difficulties that you faced?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Nairobi, Kenya, in a family of three boys. I was a baby in the family, and my mom was a sole breadwinner, and she would make about $5 to $10 a month. I mean, $5 to $10 a month is way below the poverty line, and if there's a word that describes my childhood, it's survival.
Right.
Survival because we did not have a fridge that you would wake up in the morning and go get a glass of cold milk. Uh, it was a lot of times we had no idea when the next plate of food would come from. And sometimes it would go for days without having food to eat. And if you've ever gone for more than a day without having food to eat, you become desperate. You would do absolutely anything just to get food in your stomach. And for me, that's what pushed me to going and knocking on people's doors, begging for food because I needed the food to be able to survive. But it wasn't a very good experience because I had knocked on these people's doors so many times that they were just tired of seeing my face over and over again. And so when I had to knock on their door and they saw my face again, a lot of times they just shut the door on my face. And the few times they let me in, they made the point to humiliate me and my mom just because she wouldn't be able to provide us with food. And I mean, that was hard. We never had access to clean water. Every time we got sick, my mom would tell us the hope that you're going to be fine because she didn't have the money to take us to hospital. And back in those days, if you showed up in a hospital and you did not have money or insurance, the hospitals would not take you in. And so really every time we got sick, my mom would tell us, go to bed. And hopefully when we woke up in the morning, we woke up fine. And that was tough. It was tough because and she told me this story that when I was about 1 year old, I came down with measles and there was a huge measles outbreak in Kenya that ended up taking the lives of so many kids. And I happened to be one of those kids who had measles. And when my mom was holding me because she couldn't take me to a hospital, she told me that when she looked at me that night, she didn't think I would make it through the end of the night. But, by the grace of God, I survived just like so many other times in my life. But for me, I would say the absolute worst thing about poverty is the hopelessness that comes from poverty. Is the people who used to look at me straight in the eyes and tell me that I am worth less and I will never amount to anything. And really being stuck in a situation that you have no hope. There is no light at the end of a tunnel. And they tell you this is your life. And the problem with generational cycles of poverty is it is so hard to break out of them. And I happen to be one of those children that was stuck in a generational cycle of poverty.
Wow. I think most people here in America can't relate, can't even imagine that. And in 2019, my wife, Julie, and I were honored to participate in a vision trip to Ecuador. And we met a child and her mother that we had known through our Compassion International sponsorship for 11 years at that point. And we were struck by the difficulties that we saw on the ground. But we were also really inspired by the great things taking place through child sponsorships. And we wanted to be able to do something more. How did Compassion International help you through those difficult times?
Yeah. And so the way compassion works is there has to be a local church for there to be a compassion program. So compassion only works through the local church. But for me, when I was introduced to compassion, I was about 8 years old, and my mom heard about this church that was helping people, and we went there. And Compassion obviously they have to make sure that the kids who want to be sponsored, who want the help, really do need the help. And so Compassion does background checks and home visits to make sure that this kids' problems they are genuine. And so they visited my home, and it didn't take very much convincing that we needed the help. And so I got registered and sponsored through Compassion. And it's going through these churches. I met this staff hired by Compassion, and it's the love and care and warmth that they had towards me that was so beautiful. I in my life growing up as a kid, I did not elicit those kind of emotions where people want to hug you, love on you, pour into your life. But this is exactly what I got at the Compassion Center. And for me, one of the most unique things was getting to hear about Jesus, because this was one of my first encounters with Jesus. I had no idea who Christ was until I started going to the church. But it's in the way these people loved on me that it made me want to have what they have. And so on one of the days that I went to the Compassion Center, I accepted Christ as my Lord and Savior. And I mean, I can attribute a lot of, it feels like Compassion started a revolution in my heart when they gave me Jesus in my heart, because that was the beginning of my way out of poverty. And Compassion was so good in terms of making sure they provided me with food and clean water, and every time, making sure that they're taking care of my medical needs every time I got sick. And they took me to school, and I was the first person in my whole family to go on and graduate high school. So I had this dream as a child to become an accountant. But with poverty, one of the first things that I lost, other than hope, was my dreams. And so growing up knowing that, you can't waste your time dreaming, because none of your dreams will ever come true. That was really hard. But to be able to join a Compassion Center, and for me to be inspired, but not only for that, but for them to actually take me to a school, and for me to go on, graduate high school and finish college and graduate with my bachelor's degree in accounting, that was a dream come true for me. And I got a scholarship to go to North Dakota State, and I did my master's degree, sat for my CPA license, and I'm a CPA in America. But I'm an accountant. See, the one thing that I have always wanted to become is my reality today. And because Compassion came into my life, and I got to have this sponsor who chose me and got to write me letters and loved on me. And it's the relationship for me growing out of poverty that was really important. Compassion did pour into my life, and today I represent what they do. I have been released from poverty, but in Jesus' name as well.
Right. Absolutely. And you were telling me, we were talking offline. You said, Compassion asks each child to create a book called My Plan for Tomorrow. And it's with the help of a teacher. And you mentioned that you were hesitant about writing down your plan of being an accountant. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, because so every time people would ask me growing up, what I wanted to become, I would gladly and with a smile on my face tell them that I wanted to become an accountant.
Right.
But it's the responses that I got back from the same people that really they just crushed my hopes and dreams, because it was the resounding response that I got from people is, don't waste your time dreaming, because none of your dreams will ever come true. And so when I joined Compassion, and one of the first things they did is they gave me this book called My Plan for Tomorrow. And I think Compassion did that intentionally, because they knew that in poverty, one of the first things you lose is your dreams. They give you a chance to start to dream again. And so one of the first times they gave me that book, and what they said is to write whatever we wanted to become. And I wrote accounting, but I kept erasing it. And one of the teachers looked at me and realized that I was struggling, to be able to write whatever I wanted to become. And they came over and talked to me. And one of the things they said is, I know this is hard for you, because over and over again, people have told you that you will never be able to achieve your dreams. But that teacher told me, just have hope, write it down, and then we'll pray about it. And so for the first time, I wrote it confidently that I wanted to become an accountant. And there was just something different about that, because now, and every year that passed on, we had to keep updating the same dream. But what happened is, something beautiful happened is, as the years went by, I got way more confident in writing out that I wanted to become an accountant. That I started to believe that maybe this would come true for me. And I finally realized my dreams. I get to be what I always wanted to become, an accountant.
That is such an amazing story. Um, and I wanted to pull that into the title of our show, Dreams Come True. And I just love what happened with you and with Compassion coming together, and how that all happened, and you becoming an accountant and getting not only a bachelor's, but also a master of accountancy, and you're a CPA. So you took it way beyond just the accountant part. And I understand your sponsor's name is also Owen, right? And he was the best man in your wedding. He was a big part of your story, getting your bachelor's degree and your master's of accountancy. Can you tell us about your journey?
Yeah, it's when I first got the letter for my first letter for my sponsor. And one of the ways that Compassion gives out the letters from the sponsors to their kids is they call everybody together, and then they call out the letters not by the kids' names, but they call out the letters by their sponsors' names, because the kids know who their sponsors are. And so they call them out. And it was almost life-changing for the first time in my life to hear my sponsor's name being called out, and getting to receive that letter, and reading that letter. And it's the encouragement that I got from the letter. It's the love and the constant love that I got from the letters, from that letter, and the so many letters that came back, to know that somebody so many thousands of miles away chose me, and chose to sponsor me, and chose to love me. It was special. And it created this special relationship with my sponsor. Came to find out later that for my Compassion sponsor, one of the reasons why he sponsored me was because his name was Owen. And so that for him kind of drew him, it drew him to me. And we had this awesome relationship. I would call him big bro, and he would call me small bro, because he wasn't very much older than I was. And so life goes on. We build this awesome relationship. And about 11 years ago, on our biggest day, when I got engaged with my wife, one of the first people that I thought to call was my sponsor. And what I had to ask him, will you do me the privilege of standing next to me on our biggest day? And he said yes. And my Compassion sponsor was the best man in our wedding. And it just goes to show really what Compassion is all about. It's about creating relationships with these kids that who've been written off by the world, and being able to love on them and encourage them, and then seeing them get out of poverty. But not only that, seeing them break the generational cycle of poverty. Because the reality for me today is, I have broken the cycle of poverty from my life, my family's life. See, poverty stops with me because compassion took me and released me from poverty. But because they did that, I've been able to go back and take my whole family out of poverty. And so it's not just one child that got released from poverty, it's a whole family that got released from poverty. But also, one of the most beautiful things is because I got the hope of Jesus in my life. I got to take Jesus to my whole family, and I got to share the hope of Jesus with my family as well.
Absolutely. And my wife and I have sponsored children, and it's amazing the ways that we've been blessed by getting to know that child and what's happening and updates and what are you going to do next and all of that. I would encourage you guys out there, look into it. Really, look into a sponsorship. See, but you're going to be blessed by it in ways you can't even imagine. But being able to see a child and how they develop and corresponding back and forth and learning about the country. What do you do for your holiday celebrations and different things? It's amazing how much you get out of it as a sponsor. It's unreal. So, and now I understand you sponsor kids through Compassion International, and it's you're helping them overcome difficult circumstances. It's really amazing. It's like things have come full circle, haven't they?
Yeah, and it's so yeah. So me and my wife, we have three kids of our own. We have three boys, and we sponsor three kids through Compassion. And for me, one of the reasons why we do sponsor kids through Compassion is because I believe in the ministry and the programs they have in place for these kids. Because for me, accounting is working out for me right now. But if accounting didn't work out for me, through my time in Compassion, I had been equipped with enough skills to be able to take one of them and get myself out of poverty. And so, for me, they taught me how to make cakes and pastries, and I would have started my own bakery shop and found my way out of poverty. But they also taught me how to make shoes, leather shoes from scratch. But there was so many skills that Compassion, whether it's welding, carpentry, woodwork, every child that gets to go through the Compassion program gets the opportunity to learn 3 or 4 different skills that they can in turn use those and turn them into income generating activities. And so for me sponsoring these kids, it's beautiful because I know what it means for those kids, because I was one of those kids. And
Right.
so it changed my life. And so for me to get the opportunity to change someone's life, someone who is not in a position to repay you back right now, it's absolutely beautiful, because not only are you just impacting that one child, but you're impacting his or her family, you're impacting his or her communities. So because what you're doing is you're taking all these kids that come with so much hopelessness, you're loving on them, you're putting light in their lives, but you also create an impact, an influence to the community, because all these kids, when you give them hope and you're able to take them out of poverty, these kids then, like for me, I can tell you, to whom much is given, much is expected. And so for me, because so much has been poured in my life, it becomes so much easier to pour into other people's lives. And so sponsoring the three kids through Compassion has been awesome. We've been able to at least go see 2 of them. And so God kind of really brought my whole story full circle, because I started working for Compassion as an accountant. And it's been a dream come true. I never thought that my life would be where it is right now. And so when I started working for Compassion, one of the questions I always had was, Compassion changed my life, and we love the ministry. And so we sponsor these kids through Compassion. And so the question I always asked is, I really do hope that the outside Compassion looks so good. And that was one of my things, is I really do hope that when I look at their numbers, that the inside looks as good as the outside looks. And so I am the manager of accounting, and so I get to I get to look at their books. I get to look at their books on a monthly, on an annual basis. But for me, now working for Compassion for uh, about a year and a half, I can tell you this. I love Compassion even more because of their financial integrity. You know, they say what they do and their numbers actually reflect it. And this is a CPA speaking. And so it's really cool to be able to work for a ministry that is in the business of just rewriting histories in kids' lives, you know, breaking generational barriers and boundaries. And it's impacting lives, and it's impacting families and nations, you know, to the ends of the world.
Absolutely. I was really fortunate when we went to Ecuador to visit a mom and her daughter that we'd known for years, 11 years at that point, and being able to spend time with them and seeing what happened with their family. And it was so, so much fun. And now you live in the Colorado Springs area, as I understand it, and with your wife and 3 children. And, what does it feel like to be able to help other children that were in similar situations? Maybe not the same, but somewhat similar situations to yours. What does that feel like?
It's to me, I feel like God has really blessed us, especially when you think about America as a nation. We are so blessed. And you know, to take the opportunity to just use what God has blessed me with to be able to bless other kids, it's the best feeling ever. I can tell you it's the best money that I ever spend because I know, you know, compassion is pouring into the lives of these kids. They are, you know, they're in the business of taking these kids and transforming their lives and sending them out there to do even more good. And so it's sponsoring kids through compassion. It's one of for me it's the best thing that I ever get to do, to be able to take the resources that God has blessed me with, but to also bless people who I know are not in a position to pay me back, but people who I know will it comes naturally. You know, we talk about pay it forward. Like for me, when compassion helped me, it's so natural to me to pay it forward. And so it's you pouring into the life of this kid. It's you pouring into the lives of this, you know, of so many kids, but also knowing that will continue because those kids will in turn pour into the lives of so many people. And so what happens is you end up having a ripple effect that started with one child, that started with one church, and then it spreads all over the city, it spreads all over the country. And it's like, do good, but then that good is multiplied, and it's in multiplied in, you know, and it's in multiplied in Jesus' name, which is even more awesome.
Absolutely. Love it. And this last question I ask all of my guests: what would you say as a final word of advice for our friends who are out there listening or watching today?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say thank you for listening to me, and thank you for uh, Andy. Thank you so much for what you do for the least of this. You know, the Bible says that if you do it to the least of this, you do it unto me. And I just want to say, on behalf of all those kids in Ghana who have been impacted, thank you. Thank you so much. May God bless you. May God, you know, fill your storehouses, open up the floodgates of heaven, and fill into your life because you are transforming lives, but you're also you're transforming families and you're transforming cities and nations. Thank you so much for, you know, loving so well. And it's sometimes we don't realize that you know, and sometimes it doesn't even take so much to create, you know, a huge impact in someone's life. And so if you're listening to me today and you're in a position to be able to bless you know, to be able to bless a child, to be able to bless a community, to be able to love on them, I mean, I would urge you to take this opportunity because it comes back 100-fold. You know, for me, giving, I feel like it's one of it's one of the best ways for me that I've found in worship is giving, because when you do that, you're doing it unto the Lord, but it just does something to your soul, and it's beautiful too. And so if you get the opportunity, especially right now with with the COVID and post-COVID, and a lot of the world, a lot of the people who were poor before COVID happened, unfortunately, have been plunged deeper into poverty because, at least like when you look at America, at least we were able to be shielded in terms of the impact that COVID had. But when you go into all these third world countries, a lot of the people who were poor became poorer because a lot of the business that were on the verge of collapse, they collapsed during COVID. And so there's a food crisis all over the world. There's a lot of need that it just worsened for a lot of people. And so if you're in a position to be able to love on and pour on to these people, compassion is a great way. And I love compassion because compassion is a great steward for what they're given. And so if you're in a position to do that, do that. It's gonna bless you. It's gonna bless you in ways that you don't even realize. I'm gonna end with this. So my sponsor, Owen, he has an autoimmune disease, and when he started sponsoring me, and that was so back in about 15 years ago, Owen had a fear that he would not be able to go to grow up and see his kids, his daughters, walk his daughters down the aisle, because he didn't think he would live long enough. But for me, because I knew about it, I remember that was one of the things that I took to the Lord every time I went to bed. And I asked the Lord, I asked him, God, this man has poured love into my life. He is transforming my life. He is loving on me. And so I asked God, may you protect him, heal him, make sure that he is able to walk his daughters down the aisle. And it's amazing because I feel like God does listen to the prayers of kids. God does listen to the prayer of a poor kid who's been loved on in ways that he's never experienced it before. Because 15 years later, he's still alive and he's still strong, and his kids have grown. And I know that God will keep him, and not just to walk his daughters down the aisle, but to also get to see his grandkids and his great grandkids. And it's the blessing that comes with giving. It might not take very much to give, but it's the blessings that come back to you when you do.
Absolutely. I just feel like I'm just a steward of God's money. So it's really not anything, people should thank me for. It's just stewarding things that have been given to me, So I know that there's a lot of executives that are out there that can make a difference. In the post, there's a link to click, and you can help where the need is greatest. And you can sponsor a child and get back and forth letters and pictures and get to know that child and be an encouragement. And so I'm going to encourage everybody out there to do that. And thank you, Owen, for what you're doing. I've seen your videos. I've read about you. What you're doing is spreading joy, spreading love. So thank you for what you're doing. And thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Andy.
And that's going to do it for this edition. Thank you, everyone, for watching or listening. We'll see you again soon. Take care.